Hey there, Demwins Media viewers. This is Matt Staub here, back with some more news to you today. Unfortunately, in this current presidency, it seems like we could never go longer than a day without being a global laughingstock. Today is no exception. Donald Trump was at the UN General Assembly giving a speech today, and as you would predict, it was so riddled with falsehoods, it would take a full day to get through debunking all of them. But just to name a few off the top of my head that he talked about, he claimed inflation was gone. It's not. He claimed, grocery prices are up all over the world except for the US and that they're actually going down in the US. That is not true. Food prices are not going down. He said energy prices are going down and lower than they've ever been. They're not. So that's just a couple of the falsehoods that he repeated. But, when he was speaking to and addressing all of these leaders at the UNGA today, he also talked about all of these foreign policy falsehoods that are not rooted in reality at all, and were just much more rooted in self-flattery and making himself feel good and like the most powerful person in the room, rather than someone who was, interested in finding compromise and unifying the leaders he was there to address. So to start off with one of the falsehoods that he repeated time after time today, let's play that clip.
Many others. Likewise, in a period of just 7 months, I have ended 7 unendable wars. They said they were unendable. You're never going to get them solved. Some were going for 31 years, 2 of them, 31, think of it, 31 years. One was 36 years. One was 28 years. I ended 7 wars.
By the way, nobody really knows what 7 wars he's even talking about. Obviously, the Israel Gaza conflict is ongoing. The war in Ukraine is ongoing. He's talked about the Armenia Azerbaijan conflict, which he didn't even pronounce Armenia correctly last week when he was talking about it in a different speech. The world leaders that he was addressing sat pretty stone-faced through this entire thing. They did not treat this like a MAGA rally as much as he wanted it to feel that way. The applause was few and far between. People were pretty stone-faced the entire time. And of course, as Trump is repeating these falsehoods of all of the wars he's solved, he eventually got to the one thing that he really cares about, and it's this. Let's take a look.
Wars is action. Now, after ending all of these wars and also earlier negotiating the Abraham Accords, which is a very big thing for which our country received no credit, never receives credit. Everyone says that I should get the Nobel Peace Prize for each one of these achievements. But for me, the real prize will be the sons and daughters who live to grow up with their mothers and fathers, because millions of people are no longer being killed in endless and unglorious wars.
So yes, he's trying to take credit for saving quote unquote millions of lives, despite the fact that none of these peace deals that he or the administration are talking about have actually materialized. So this is just him patting himself on the back for things that haven't happened. Not particularly surprising. He also, of course, couldn't help but rail against his favorite topic, which is Joe Biden, and called him weak and pathetic. And he also started railing against other leaders, other world leaders, other big city mayors around the world, including this that he had to say about London's mayor in his speech as well. Let's take a look.
And I have to say, I look at London, where you have a terrible mayor, terrible, terrible mayor. And it's been so changed, so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law, but you're in a different country. You can't do that. Both the immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will be the death of Western Europe if something is not done immediately. This cannot be sustained.
Let's be very clear here. Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, is not seeking to impose Sharia law in London. That is ridiculous. Trump just has a bruised ego because recently Khan gave an interview where he called out Trump's far right and divisive politics and basically called on Europe and the US to try to get over this unbreaking phase of kind of embracing far right politics that we've seen take place over the past decade. So at the end of the day, between that and this obsession Trump has with the Nobel Peace Prize, this just underscores that this speech was about ego and it was not about policy. Toward the end of the speech, it got particularly dark when Trump couldn't help but bring up his favorite topic, which was, demonizing immigrants and countries that embrace immigration. Here is what he had to say about that.
And I'm really good at predicting things, They actually said during the campaign they had a hat, the best-selling hat. Trump was right about everything. And I don't say that in a braggadocious way, but it's true. I've been right about everything. I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell. Proud to see this morning I have the highest poll numbers I've ever had.
It was all over the place. Not only did he tell all of these countries that they were going to hell for having immigration and an immigration system at all, but also somehow found a way in there to brag about a hat and his poll numbers. So, of course, his framing around this is that immigration is equals national collapse. And instead of addressing, global cooperation on immigration, he's just trying to, nudge people into shutting down immigration systems altogether, which is just fundamentally not how the world works. And at the end of the day, it just undermines US credibility with allies who see immigration differently and realize that what Trump is proposing and the way he talks about immigration is not realistic and not rooted in reality. At the end of this speech, obviously, things blew up online, and a lot of people, of course, are decrying all of the falsehoods that existed in this speech. But I do want you to take a look at how Fox News covered this speech at the end, because I think it is important for people to see that while maybe most people would see a speech like this and say, what is going on? Fox still finds a way to take these falsehoods and some of these outright crazy things that are being said and somehow tries to twist them into Trump being a brilliant, magician of foreign policy. Let's take a look at what Harris Faulkner had to say about Trump's speech.
President Trump has been speaking at the United Nations General Assembly in New York City. He unfurled raw truth to countries in attendance there and to the rest of the world. And moments from now, the president is set to hold a meeting with the UN Secretary General. And that meeting will follow that long speech that put quite the spotlight on the different world order we are living in now. He even called the former President Joe Biden by name, comparing where the world was under Biden and while Biden was leading the United States and where we are now. The president talked in detail about his own foreign policy victories, the successful containment of illegal immigration into the United States. And he had a warning, too, for other countries with all those open borders. And, of course, he talked about the ongoing wars with Israel versus Hamas and Ukraine versus Russia. I'm Harris Faulkner.
Raw truth. That is what you heard Harris Faulkner call that speech, despite the fact that there was next to nothing truthful in it. On top of that, she talks about his, foreign policy victories and the detailed foreign policy he goes into in this speech. There was no detailed foreign policy talk. There were no, he was highlighting victories, but they're not real victories. And so I think it's just a good example of the contrast between the global reaction to this speech, which is confusion and probably some anger and embarrassment for the United States, and how, US right-wing media is covering this to give their viewers the impression that this was somehow a success. It is clearly a disastrous speech, and it is being rewritten for partisan audience, and that is what this is disappointing about this. So that's it today for our coverage on Trump's UNGA speech. If you like this video, throw a like on it. Follow the Demwins Media YouTube channel. Follow me at buildingthebench.substack.com, and we will keep bringing you the news as you need to see it. Thanks for watching.